To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Warning. Robert Finley adjusted his leather jacket as the autumn wind cut through the parking lot of Westfield Mall. At 45, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built his construction empire from nothing, his weathered hands telling stories of years spent working concrete and steel before transitioning to boardrooms and contracts. His 17-year-old daughter Emma walked beside him, her usually bright demeanor subdued. "Dad, let's not go through the main entrance," Emma said suddenly, grabbing his jacket sleeve just as they approached the glass doors. Rob stopped, studying his daughter's face. Emma had always been perceptive, inheriting his sharp instincts along with her mother's striking features. "Why?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Let's use the side door instead," she insisted, her voice carrying an urgency that made Rob's protective instincts flare. Something in her tone made him listen. They had always shared an unspoken understanding. Emma was the one person in his life who had never disappointed him, never lied to him. If she sensed danger, he trusted her judgment completely. They walked around the sprawling mall complex, Emma leading him toward a service entrance near the department store anchor. Rob's mind raced through possibilities. Was there some kind of threat? A problem with one of his construction sites nearby? His company, Finley Construction, had made enemies over the years, competitors who resented his aggressive business tactics, unions he'd refused to bend to, city officials he'd exposed for corruption. 30 minutes later, as they browsed through the electronics store, Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "Dad, I need to show you something," she whispered, leading him to a secluded corner near the gaming displays. Through the large windows overlooking the main entrance atrium, Rob saw them. His wife Linda, dressed in the emerald green dress he'd bought her for their anniversary last month, was locked in an intimate embrace with a man Rob didn't recognize. The stranger was tall, athletic, with the kind of polished appearance that screamed privilege and entitlement. They weren't just talking. Linda's hands were cupped around his face as she kissed him with a passion Rob hadn't seen from her in years. Rob froze, his blood turning to ice. 20 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built together. And this was how he discovered it was all a lie. But what struck him most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the way Emma had known. His daughter had protected him from witnessing this humiliation in public, giving him the dignity of discovering it on his own terms. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly, his voice deadly calm. Emma's eyes filled with tears. 2 months. I saw them at that coffee place downtown when I was with friends. I wanted to tell you, but I hoped it would end. I've been watching, trying to figure out what to do." Rob placed a steady hand on his daughter's shoulder. In that moment, he made 2 decisions that would shape everything that followed. Linda had just destroyed their family, and she would pay for it in ways she couldn't imagine. But Emma had chosen loyalty, had chosen him. That meant everything. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," he said, pulling her into a brief hug. "Now, tell me everything you know about him." Chapter 2. The Investigation. The man's name was Trevor Walsh, and within 72 hours, Rob knew everything about him. Rob's construction business had required him to develop relationships with private investigators, background check services, and information brokers. When you were bidding on million-dollar contracts, you needed to know who you were dealing with. Trevor was 38, a real estate developer who specialized in luxury condominiums. He drove a silver BMW, lived in a downtown penthouse, and had a reputation for pursuing married women. Most interesting to Rob was Trevor's background. Old money from Connecticut, the kind of privileged upbringing that bred men who believed they were entitled to take whatever they wanted. Rob sat in his home office, a converted garage behind their suburban house, studying the files spread across his mahogany desk. Photos, financial records, social media screenshots, even Trevor's daily routines. His business partner Amy Torres had helped gather some of the information through her network of real estate contacts. "This is thorough," Amy said, reviewing the documentation. At 34, Amy was sharp, ambitious, and one of the few people Rob trusted completely in business. She'd started as his project manager 5 years ago and had quickly proven herself invaluable. "But Rob, what exactly are you planning?" Rob leaned back in his chair, his jaw set in the expression that had made dozens of competitors back down over the years. "Linda thinks she's been clever. She thinks I'm the oblivious husband who works too much and doesn't pay attention. She's about to learn how wrong she is. The investigation had revealed more than just the affair. Linda had been using their joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and even a weekend trip to Napa Valley that she'd told Rob was a girls' trip with her sister. She'd been lying for months, maybe longer. But what sealed Linda's fate in Rob's mind wasn't just the cheating. It was what Emma had overheard during one of Linda's phone calls. Linda had been discussing Rob with Trevor, mocking his blue-collar background, calling him predictable and boring. She'd told her lover that she was planning to wait until Emma graduated high school, then file for divorce and take half of everything Rob had built. She wants to play games, Rob said, organizing the photos into neat stacks. Fine, but she's about to learn that I don't lose games I choose to play. Amy looked uncomfortable. Rob, I know you're angry, but don't do anything that could hurt your custody of Emma or damage the business. Rob's smile was cold. I'm not going to damage anything of mine, Amy. But Linda and her boyfriend? They're going to wish they'd never met. He'd already started phase 1 of his plan. The previous day, he'd hired Monica Rivera, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state, known for her ability to find hidden assets and expose infidelity in ways that devastated the cheating spouse's case. But the legal aspect was just the beginning. Rob had built his construction empire by understanding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. Linda's weakness was her image. She prided herself on being seen as the perfect wife and mother in their upscale neighborhood. Trevor's weakness was his reputation in the luxury real estate market, where trust and relationships meant everything. They were both about to discover that Robert Finley didn't just build things. He could tear them down with surgical precision. Chapter 3: The Foundation. Rob's plan required patience and careful timing. Over the next 2 weeks, he maintained the facade of a normal marriage while gathering intelligence and laying groundwork. Linda continued her affair, believing herself undetected, while Rob documented every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of betrayal. The first move came through his construction business. Trevor's development company was seeking permits for a luxury condo project on the north side of town, a project that would require extensive site preparation and foundation work. Rob instructed Amy to have Finley Construction submit a competitive bid, positioning themselves as the ideal partner for the job. You want to work with your wife's lover? Amy asked, incredulous. I want him to trust me, Rob replied. I want him close enough that when I destroy him, he'll never see it coming. The strategy worked. Trevor's company, Walsh Development, awarded the site prep contract to Finley Construction. Rob attended the signing meeting personally, shaking Trevor's hand and looking directly into the eyes of the man who was sleeping with his wife. Trevor was exactly what Rob had expected, smooth, confident, with the kind of inherited arrogance that came from never having to build anything himself. He spoke about the project as if he were doing Rob a favor, mentioning how selective his company was about contractors. I appreciate the opportunity, Rob said, his voice steady and professional. I look forward to working together. Meanwhile, Rob was setting other pieces in motion. He'd discovered that Linda had been using their home computer to communicate with Trevor through a private email account. Rob had extensive security experience from protecting his construction sites and had no difficulty accessing Linda's accounts. Every email, every message, every photo they'd exchanged was now copied and stored. The breakthrough came when Rob discovered that Trevor had been using his influence to fast-track permits for his own projects while delaying competitors' approvals. It wasn't illegal, exactly, but it was the kind of insider dealing that could destroy relationships in the tight-knit development community. But Rob's most devastating discovery was personal. In one of Linda's emails to Trevor, she'd written about Emma, calling their daughter Rob's little spy, and expressing frustration that Emma didn't seem to like Trevor during their few brief encounters. Linda had suggested that after the divorce, Emma could learn to adjust to her new stepfather. That night, as Rob sat in his office reviewing the evidence, Emma knocked on his door. Dad, I made you some coffee, she said, carrying in a steaming mug. Thanks, sweetheart. Rob accepted the coffee, studying his daughter's face. She looked tired, stressed from carrying the weight of her mother's secret. I keep thinking I should have told you sooner, Emma said quietly. Rob set down his mug and pulled Emma into a hug. You handled this perfectly. You protected me from public humiliation, and you gave me time to prepare. That shows real wisdom. What are you going to do? Rob's expression hardened. I'm going to make sure that your mother and her boyfriend understand that actions have consequences. Real consequences. Emma nodded, and Rob saw something in her eyes that reminded him of himself. A recognition that some betrayals were unforgivable, that some people deserved exactly what was coming to them. Linda had made her choice when she decided to destroy their family. Now Rob would show her what happened when someone tried to take everything he'd built. The foundation was set. Now it was time to build their destruction, brick by brick. Chapter 4. The Deception. 3 weeks into the construction project, Rob had become Trevor's most trusted contractor. Walsh Development's luxury condo project was proceeding ahead of schedule, and Trevor had begun treating Rob almost like a friend. He would stop by the construction site daily, discussing plans and timelines with the kind of casual familiarity that made Rob's stomach turn. You know, Rob, Trevor said one October morning, surveying the excavation work. I was skeptical about using a local contractor, but you've really impressed me. This kind of efficiency is exactly what I need for my other projects. Rob nodded, adjusting his hard hat. Quality work speaks for itself. I believe in delivering what I promise. The irony wasn't lost on him. While Trevor praised his reliability, the man was simultaneously destroying Rob's marriage. But Rob's patience was about to pay off. He'd been studying Trevor's other developments, and he'd found the weakness he needed. Trevor's flagship project, a luxury high-rise called the Meridian, had been built 3 years ago using a different contractor. Rob's investigation had revealed that the building had significant structural issues that had been covered up through bribes and falsified inspection reports. The foundation had stress fractures that would only worsen over time, and the building's ventilation system had design flaws that violated several safety codes. More importantly, Rob had discovered that Trevor knew about these problems and had been quietly purchasing additional insurance policies while actively marketing units to unsuspecting buyers. 3 families had already moved into the building, including an elderly couple who had invested their entire retirement savings in a penthouse unit. That evening, Rob sat in his truck outside the coffee shop where Linda met Trevor twice a week. Through the window, he watched them hold hands across a small table, their conversation animated and intimate. Linda threw her head back laughing at something Trevor said, the same laugh that had made Rob fall in love with her 20 years ago. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom said she's having dinner with Aunt Susan tonight. She left an hour ago wearing that black dress you bought her for your anniversary. Rob typed back, "Thank you for keeping me informed. I love you." Phase 2 of his plan was beginning. Rob had arranged for Mike Russo, his oldest friend and former business partner, to accidentally encounter Linda and Trevor at dinner. Mike owned a popular restaurant downtown and had agreed to help expose Linda's lies. The next morning, Mike called Rob with a full report. "Jesus, Rob, I'm sorry. They were all over each other. She introduced him as her business partner when I stopped by their table, but the way they were acting, there was nothing business about it. Did you get the photos?" "Yeah, everything you asked for. Clear shots of them together, timestamps, the works." "Rob, are you sure about this? I mean, what you're planning? It's going to be brutal." Rob's voice was ice cold. "Mike, they've been planning to destroy my life for months. Linda wants to wait until Emma graduates, then take half of everything I've built while she moves in with her boyfriend. She's already spent thousands of our money on hotel rooms and trips with this guy. Now she's going to learn what real consequences look like." The photos Mike provided were perfect. Rob added them to his growing collection of evidence, each image a nail in the coffin of Linda's future. But the pictures were just ammunition. The real weapon was the information about the Meridian. Rob had made contact with Daniel Morrison, a structural engineer who specialized in building inspections. Daniel owed Rob a favor from a previous construction project, and he'd agreed to conduct a routine safety inspection of the Meridian, an inspection that would reveal every hidden flaw in Trevor's flagship building. "The foundation issues alone are enough to trigger a full evacuation," Daniel had told Rob. "If this gets out, every unit owner will have grounds for a massive lawsuit. The guy who developed this building will be finished." Rob smiled grimly. Trevor thought he was so clever, seducing other men's wives while cutting corners on safety to maximize profits. He was about to learn that some games had higher stakes than he'd imagined. But Rob wasn't finished. Linda wanted to play the role of the innocent wife while planning her escape. He'd give her a performance she'd never forget. And Trevor thought he could waltz into Rob's life and steal everything? He was about to discover that Rob Finley didn't just build buildings. He could demolish reputations with the same precision and efficiency. The foundation of their destruction was complete. Now it was time to bring down the walls. Chapter 5, The Trap. By November, Rob's plan was reaching its crescendo. Trevor had grown so comfortable with their working relationship that he'd invited Rob to a private investor dinner at the Meridian's Penthouse Club. The event was designed to attract new investors for Trevor's upcoming projects, with the existing building serving as a showcase of his development expertise. "This is my crown jewel," Trevor told Rob as they stood on the building's observation deck, looking out over the city lights. 32 luxury units, every one of them sold within 6 months. That's the kind of success that speaks for itself. Rob nodded appreciatively, knowing that within days, this building would become Trevor's destruction. Daniel Morrison had completed his inspection and would be releasing his report to the city building department on Monday morning. The report detailed not just the structural flaws, but evidence of the bribery and falsified documents that had allowed the building to pass its original inspections. "You should consider investing in my next project," Trevor continued. "With your construction expertise and my development vision, we could build something really special together." The suggestion was so brazenly hypocritical that Rob almost laughed. Trevor was sleeping with his wife while trying to use Rob's skills to build his empire. But Rob simply smiled and said, "I'll definitely consider it." What Trevor didn't know was that Rob had already been building something special, the complete annihilation of everything Trevor valued. The dinner party was elegant, attended by local business leaders, politicians, and potential investors. Rob recognized several faces from the social circles he and Linda frequented, people who knew him as the successful contractor with the beautiful wife. As he mingled with the crowd, Rob wondered how many of them suspected Linda's affair, how many had seen her with Trevor and said nothing. The evening's entertainment included a presentation by Trevor about his development philosophy, emphasizing quality, integrity, and community trust. Rob listened to the speech while mentally reviewing the evidence he'd compiled about the Meridian's safety violations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trevor announced, "I'd like you to meet Robert Finley, the contractor who's been doing exceptional work on my latest project. Rob, would you like to say a few words about our partnership?" Rob stood, accepting the microphone with a smile. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. "Thank you, Trevor. Working with Walsh Development has been educational. I've learned a great deal about Trevor's approach to business, his attention to detail, and his commitment to excellence." Rob paused, looking around the room at the assembled investors. "In my experience, you can judge a developer by the quality of their work. That's why I always recommend that potential investors take a close look at existing projects before committing their money to new ones." Trevor smiled, not recognizing the trap that had just been set. "In fact," Rob continued, "I'd encourage everyone here to have their own structural engineers review any building before investing. It's just good business practice." The suggestion was perfectly reasonable, even helpful. But Rob knew that within days, when Daniel's report became public, every person in that room would remember his words and realize he'd been trying to warn them. After the dinner, as Rob walked to his truck, his phone rang. It was Emma. "Dad, Mom's not coming home tonight. She said she has an early meeting tomorrow and is staying at Aunt Susan's again. Thank you for letting me know. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay. I'm ready for this to be over." "It will be soon, sweetheart. Very soon." Rob drove home through the quiet suburbs, passing the house where his wife was probably spending the night with her lover. In less than 72 hours, both Linda and Trevor would discover that their carefully constructed deception was about to collapse around them. But Rob's revenge wouldn't be complete with just exposing the affair and Trevor's building violations. That was only the beginning. Phase 3 of his plan would destroy not just their reputations, but their futures. Linda wanted to take half of his life's work. She was about to learn that when you declared war on Robert Finley, you'd better be prepared for total devastation. Chapter 6, The Strike. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of bitter wind that cut through the heaviest coats. Rob was on site at Trevor's condo project before dawn, watching his crew prepare for another day of work. Everything appeared normal. Workers arriving with coffee and hard hats, the steady rhythm of construction that had defined Rob's life for decades. His phone rang at exactly 8:47 a.m. Mr. Finley? The voice belonged to Sandra Hill, a reporter from the city's largest newspaper. I'm calling about the structural integrity report that was just released regarding the Meridian building. I understand your company did some preliminary consultation work on the project. Rob's performance was flawless. I'm sorry, what report? I haven't seen anything about the Meridian. The city building department just released a comprehensive inspection report documenting serious safety violations. There are foundation problems, falsified inspection records, possible bribery. The building is being evacuated as we speak. I was hoping you could comment on the construction quality. That's very concerning. If there are safety issues, I hope they're addressed immediately. The residents' safety should be the top priority. Will this affect your current working relationship with Walsh Development? Rob paused, as if considering the question carefully. If these allegations are true, Finley Construction will need to reevaluate all of our business relationships. We can't be associated with safety violations or compromised construction standards. By 10 a.m., the news was spreading throughout the construction and development community. Trevor's phones were ringing constantly as investors, buyers, and business partners demanded explanations. The Meridian's residents were being relocated to temporary housing while engineers assessed whether the building could be safely occupied. Rob received the call he'd been expecting at 11:15 a.m. Rob, what the hell is happening? Trevor's voice was strained, bordering on panic. Some inspector is claiming there are problems with the Meridian, but that's impossible. We passed every inspection. I just heard about it. Are you sure about those inspections? Of course I'm sure. This has to be some kind of mistake or sabotage. Someone's trying to destroy my business. Rob's voice carried just the right note of concern. Trevor, I hate to bring this up, but if there are questions about your other projects, it could affect our current job. I might need to suspend work until this gets cleared up. I can't risk my company's reputation. The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds. When Trevor spoke again, his voice was hollow. Rob, please. You can't abandon this project. I need you to finish it. My investors are already spooked. I understand your position, but I have to protect my business and my workers. If there are safety concerns, there aren't any safety concerns with our project. This is completely separate. But Rob knew it was too late. By noon, 3 of Trevor's major investors had pulled their funding from current projects. By evening, the first lawsuit had been filed by Meridian residents seeking damages for their displacement and property losses. That night, Rob sat in his home office, monitoring the avalanche he'd triggered. Local news stations were running stories about the Meridian scandal. Trevor's name was being mentioned in connection with unsafe construction practices and potential criminal charges. Several other developers were distancing themselves from Walsh Development, worried about guilt by association. Emma knocked on his door, carrying a mug of hot chocolate. The news is saying that building where Trevor works might collapse. Is that true? The building won't collapse, Rob said, accepting the drink. But it does have serious problems that should have been fixed years ago. Did you know about this when you started working with him? Rob looked at his daughter, this remarkable young woman who had the wisdom to protect him and the intelligence to ask the right questions. I discovered it during our background research. Sometimes when you're trying to understand someone, you learn things about their character. Emma nodded slowly. So this is part of your plan? Justice sometimes requires patience, sweetheart. Bad people don't usually face consequences for their actions unless someone makes sure they do. What Emma didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Trevor's business was crumbling, but Rob's personal revenge was just getting started. Linda still believed her affair was secret, still thought she could plan her escape while playing the role of the devoted wife. Tomorrow, that illusion would shatter completely. And unlike Trevor's building problems, which were real safety concerns, what Rob had planned for Linda would be pure, calculated vengeance. The construction of their destruction was nearly complete. All that remained was to bring down the roof. Chapter 7, The Revelation. Tuesday evening, Rob orchestrated the final act of his revenge with the precision of a master craftsman. He'd invited Linda to dinner at Rossini's, the upscale Italian restaurant where they'd celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. Linda had seemed surprised by the invitation. Their relationship had been distant for months, but she'd agreed, probably seeing it as good cover for her double life. Rob arrived first, choosing a corner table with clear sight lines to the entrance. He'd positioned Mike at the bar, ready to document everything. At exactly 7:30 p.m., Linda walked in wearing the black dress Trevor had complimented her on during their last dinner together. Rob knew because he'd read their text messages. "You look beautiful," Rob said as Linda sat down, and he meant it. Even knowing what she'd done, he could appreciate the woman who had once been his everything. "Thank you. This is nice, Rob. We should do this more often." Rob smiled. "I've been thinking the same thing. In fact, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately." They ordered wine and appetizers, making conversation about Emma's college applications and Rob's work. Linda seemed relaxed, perhaps even hopeful that they were reconnecting. She had no idea that across town, Trevor was dealing with the complete collapse of his business empire. "Linda," Rob said after the waiter brought their entrees, "I want to ask you something, and I'd appreciate an honest answer." Something in his tone made her stiffen slightly. "Of course. Are you happy? In our marriage, I mean. Are you happy with the life we've built together?" Linda's hesitation lasted just a moment too long. "Yes, of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that?" Rob reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a manila envelope. He placed it on the table between them, his expression calm and controlled. "I know about Trevor." The color drained from Linda's face. Her wine glass trembled in her hand before she set it down carefully. "Rob, I don't know what you. I know about the hotel rooms, the dinners, the weekend in Napa, the emails where you mock my blue-collar background and plan to take half of everything I've built." Rob's voice remained steady, conversational. "I know about your plan to wait until Emma graduates, then file for divorce." Linda's composure cracked. "How long have you known?" "2 months. Emma saw you with him at that coffee shop downtown." "Emma knows." Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "Emma has known for 2 months. She's been watching you lie to my face every single day, watching you plan to destroy our family. Do you have any idea what that's done to her?" Linda's hands were shaking now. "Rob, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been playing the devoted wife while planning your escape? That you've been spending our money on hotel rooms with your boyfriend? That you called our daughter a spy in your emails?" Rob opened the envelope and spread several photographs across the table. Images of Linda and Trevor kissing, holding hands, entering hotels together. Timestamps showed dates and locations, creating an undeniable timeline of betrayal. "I also know about Trevor's business problems," Rob continued. "About the Meridian building with the structural defects. About the falsified inspections and the bribery. Amazing how these things have a way of coming to light." Linda stared at the photos, her face pale. "You did this. You destroyed his business." "I didn't destroy anything, Linda. I simply made sure that people knew the truth about the buildings Trevor constructed. The safety violations were real. The corner cutting was real. The cover-ups were real." Rob leaned forward slightly. "Just like your affair is real." "What do you want?" Linda's voice was hollow. "I want you to understand something very clearly. You chose to destroy our family. You chose to betray 20 years of marriage. You chose to plan your escape while lying to my face every single day. Now you're going to live with the consequences of those choices." Rob signaled the waiter and paid the check. "I filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow morning. You'll find that your joint access to our accounts has been suspended pending the proceedings. The evidence of your affair has been provided to my attorney, along with documentation of every dollar you've spent on your boyfriend." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Rob, please. We can work this out. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This was a calculated betrayal that went on for months. You made your choice when you decided that what we built together wasn't enough for you." Rob stood, looking down at the woman who had once been his partner, his confidant, his future. "You wanted to take half of everything I've worked for? Now you'll be lucky to get a settlement that covers basic living expenses." Adultery tends to complicate divorce proceedings, especially when it's this well documented. "What about Emma?" "Emma will live with me. She's 17, old enough to choose, and she's seen exactly who you really are. She knows which parent protected this family and which one was planning to destroy it." Rob walked away, leaving Linda sitting alone at the table with the photographs of her betrayal spread before her. Outside in the parking lot, he sat in his truck for a moment, allowing himself to feel the weight of what had just happened. 20 years of marriage ended, but it hadn't really ended tonight. It had ended the first time Linda kissed Trevor Walsh. Tonight was simply the moment when the truth finally caught up with the lies. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "How did it go?" Rob typed back, "It's over. Come home soon." Chapter 8. The Aftermath. The following weeks unfolded exactly as Rob had anticipated. Linda moved out of their house, taking only her personal belongings and the clothes that Rob's attorney determined were reasonable personal property. The joint bank accounts remained frozen pending the divorce settlement, leaving Linda dependent on whatever savings she'd managed to accumulate secretly. Trevor's situation was even worse. Walsh Development had filed for bankruptcy after 3 more lawsuits were filed by Meridian residents, and 2 major investors pulled funding from his projects. The state attorney general's office had opened a criminal investigation into the falsified inspection reports, and Trevor was facing potential charges for fraud and endangering public safety. Rob received updates on Trevor's downfall through his network of contractors and real estate professionals, each piece of news confirming that his plan had worked flawlessly. Trevor had lost his penthouse, his BMW had been repossessed, and he'd been forced to move back to Connecticut to live with his parents while fighting the criminal charges. Emma had chosen to stay with Rob, as he'd known she would. The truth about her mother's betrayal had hurt her deeply, but it had also strengthened the bond between father and daughter. Emma was applying to colleges with Rob's full support, her future secure despite the family upheaval. "Do you ever feel bad about what happened to them?" Emma asked one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. Rob considered the question carefully. "Do I feel bad that your mother faced consequences for destroying our family? No. Do I feel bad that Trevor's buildings turned out to be unsafe? No. Those residents deserve to know they were living in a dangerous structure. Do I feel bad that they're both learning that actions have consequences? Not at all. But you made sure it all happened. I made sure the truth came to light, sweetheart. Your mother chose to have an affair. Trevor chose to cut corners on safety and hide the problems. I just made sure those choices couldn't stay hidden forever." What Rob didn't tell Emma was that his revenge was still ongoing. Through his attorney, he'd ensured that Linda's affair would be a matter of public record in their divorce proceedings. Her betrayal would follow her into any future relationships, any new social circles she tried to join. The scarlet letter of her adultery would be permanently attached to her name. Rob had also made sure that Trevor's professional reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Word had spread throughout the development community about the safety violations and falsified records. No legitimate contractor would work with him, no reputable investor would fund his projects, and no municipality would approve his permits. The divorce settlement was finalized in January. Linda received exactly what Rob's attorney had predicted: minimal alimony, no claim to his business assets, and limited visitation rights with Emma. The evidence of her affair had been so comprehensive that her own attorney had advised her to accept whatever terms Rob offered rather than risk a trial that would expose even more humiliating details. 20 years, Linda had said during their final court appearance, tears streaming down her face. 20 years, and this is how you choose to end it? "I didn't choose to end anything," Rob had replied quietly. "You made that choice when you decided our marriage wasn't worth preserving." Mike Russo stopped by Rob's office in February, bringing coffee and updates on Linda's situation. "She's working at that real estate office downtown," Mike reported. "Entry-level stuff, showing rental properties mostly. Living in a studio apartment across from the community college. And Trevor, still in Connecticut. Word is his family cut him off financially after the criminal charges were filed. He's working at a hardware store, living in some kind of halfway house situation." Rob nodded, feeling no satisfaction in their misery, but no regret either. They had chosen their path when they decided to destroy his family. Now they were living with the consequences. That evening, Emma found Rob in his office, reviewing plans for a new commercial project. At 18 now, she was preparing to start college in the fall, her acceptance letter to the engineering program at the state university framed on his desk. "Dad, I want you to know something," she said. "What you did, I know some people would call it ruthless, but you protected our family. You made sure that people who hurt us faced real consequences. I respect that." Rob looked at his daughter, brilliant, strong, loyal, and realized that despite everything they'd lost, they'd gained something too. They'd learned who they could count on, who deserved their trust, and who they really were when tested. "We survived, sweetheart. That's what matters." Emma smiled. "We did more than survive, Dad. We won." Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Rob stood on the roof of his latest project, a mixed-use development that would house both commercial spaces and affordable family apartments. The building was a testament to everything he'd learned about construction over the years: solid foundation, quality materials, honest workmanship, and attention to every detail that mattered. Amy Torres joined him on the observation deck, reviewing the final inspection reports. "Everything checks out perfectly," she announced. "This is going to be a beautiful addition to the neighborhood." Rob smiled, looking out over the city he'd helped build. His business had grown substantially since the divorce, with new contracts coming in regularly. His reputation for quality and integrity had only been enhanced by his professional handling of the Trevor Walsh situation. Other developers knew they could trust him to expose problems rather than hide them. "I have some news," Amy said, her tone carrying a hint of excitement. "The city council approved our bid for the municipal complex renovation. It's the biggest contract in the company's history." "Outstanding work on the proposal," Rob replied. "You'll be running this company someday, Amy. I hope you know that." Amy blushed slightly. "I've learned from the best." Rob's phone rang, Emma calling from college. She'd adapted beautifully to university life, studying engineering with the same precision and determination that had helped her navigate her parents' divorce. "Dad, I wanted to tell you about my latest project," Emma said, her voice excited. "We're designing a structural integrity monitoring system for high-rise buildings. It would detect foundation problems and safety issues in real time, preventing situations like that Meridian building." "That sounds incredible, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. I learned from you that preventing problems is better than fixing them after they cause damage." After ending the call, Rob reflected on how much had changed. Linda had disappeared from their lives completely, moving to another state after the divorce was finalized. Occasionally, he heard updates through mutual acquaintances. She'd taken a job at a small real estate firm, was living alone, hadn't been seen with anyone romantically. Trevor had faced criminal charges and received 2 years probation along with massive civil judgments that would probably follow him for the rest of his life. The Meridian building had been extensively renovated at his expense, though he'd been forced to declare bankruptcy to escape some of the financial liability. But Rob rarely thought about either of them anymore. They had been problems that needed solving, and he'd solved them with the same methodical approach he brought to every challenge. Now they were part of his past, not his future. His future was standing beside him in the form of Amy, who had proven herself not just as a business partner, but as someone who shared his values of honesty, hard work, and loyalty. Over the months, their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared goals. "Would you like to have dinner tonight?" Amy asked as they prepared to leave the job site. "I know a place that serves excellent seafood." "I'd like that very much," Rob replied. As they walked toward the construction elevator, Rob felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine contentment. He'd built a successful business, raised a remarkable daughter, and surrounded himself with people who deserved his trust. Most importantly, he'd learned to recognize betrayal early and deal with it decisively. The elevator descended toward ground level, carrying them down from the heights of Rob's latest achievement. But unlike the marriages and partnerships that had crumbled around him, this foundation was solid. It was built on truth instead of lies, loyalty instead of betrayal, and genuine character instead of false promises. Linda and Trevor had taught him an invaluable lesson about the importance of choosing the right people to trust. They'd also learned that some men don't forgive, don't forget, and don't give second chances to people who destroy what they've worked to build. In the end, justice wasn't something that happened to people like Robert Finley. Justice was something that Robert Finley made happen, with the same skill and precision he brought to every construction project, carefully planned, expertly executed, and built to last. As they reached the ground floor and stepped out into the afternoon sunshine, Rob knew that the best parts of his life were still being built. And this time, he'd chosen his partners more carefully. The foundation was solid. Everything else was just construction details. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.